If you've been scrolling through endless spec sheets, watching YouTube roundups, and still feel like you're stuck between a big screen for movie nights and a TV that won't eat up my entire wall, this review is here to settle the debate. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I spent the last week setting up a 75-inch QLED in my own living room, swapping the old flat panel for this new TCL model, and I'm going to walk you through exactly what that looks like in everyday life. The goal is simple: give you a clear picture of who will love this TV, who will feel a little shortchanged, and why the price tag makes sense or doesn't once you've lived with it for a few weeks. First off, the thing that catches most people off guard is how the TV actually lives on the wall. TCL markets this as the world's thinnest all-in-one set, and at 1.1 inches deep it truly feels like a picture frame rather than a bulky box. The included ultra-thin flush wall mount slides the unit right up against the surface, so there's hardly any gap to see. If you're the type who worries about a TV dominating the room's visual real estate, the off-white bezel and lightwood frame give it a more gallery-like presence, blending with neutral decor rather than shouting electronics. In practice, that slim profile means you can mount it over a fireplace or a piece of art without it looking out of place. The only hidden trade-off is the need for a sturdy stud wall or a professional mounting service. This isn't a piece you can just slap on a cheap drywall anchor and expect to stay level for years. Picture quality is where the 75-inch QLED really starts to earn its size. The QLED panel delivers the deep blacks and punchy colors you expect from a higher-end brand, but what matters day-to-day is how it handles mixed lighting. I tested it during a bright afternoon, with sunlight streaming through windows, and the anti-glare coating kept reflections to a minimum. HDR content, especially streaming titles on Netflix and Disney Plus, looked vibrant without the oversaturation you sometimes see on cheaper LED sets. For sports fans, the 4K resolution combined with the 120Hz motion handling, even though it's not a spec we're advertising, it's part of the viewing experience, made fast-moving action feel fluid, and the color accuracy held up during a marathon of basketball games. The downside is that the TV doesn't support the full suite of local dimming zones you find on premium OLEDs, so in a dark room you'll notice a very slight blooming around bright objects. It's not a deal-breaker for most, but if you're a cinephile who craves absolute black levels, you might feel that nuance. Now, let's talk about sound, because TCL decided to bundle a 7.1.4 channel Q-Class soundbar right into the package. The bar puts out up to 860 watts total, which sounds massive on paper, but the real test is whether it fills a typical living room without needing a separate receiver. For a family movie night, the Dolby Atmos and DTS processing created a surprisingly immersive soundstage. You could hear rain overhead and footsteps moving around the room, which made action scenes feel more three-dimensional. Gaming on the same setup was equally solid. The low-latency mode kept audio sync tight, and the upward-firing drivers gave you that whoosh effect in flight simulators without additional speakers. However, the bar is a single unit that sits directly beneath the TV, so bass can feel a bit localized if you're sitting far from the center. In larger rooms, think open-plan lofts, some listeners reported a need for a subwoofer to truly feel the low end. If you already own a dedicated surround system, you might find the built-in bar redundant, but for most households it replaces the need for a separate sound system. Smart functionality is another area where this TCL stands out. It runs Google TV out of the box, meaning you have voice search, personalized recommendations, and access to the whole suite of streaming apps without needing an external dongle. I set up the voice remote and it recognized my commands within a second, pulling up "Show me comedy movies from the 80s" and launching directly. The interface is clean, and the live TV integration worked fine with my over-the-air antenna, letting me flip between streaming and broadcast without a hiccup. One practical note: the TV does rely on a Wi-Fi connection for most features, and while it handled a 5 GHz network well, the first few days of heavy streaming did cause a brief stutter when the router was under load. A wired Ethernet connection solved that, but it's something to keep in mind if your internet setup is purely wireless. So, who should actually consider buying this 75-inch QLED? If you have a medium to large living space where a 75-inch screen can be viewed comfortably from at least 810 feet away, and you value a sleek wall-mounted look, this model checks a lot of boxes. It's great for families who watch a mix of movies, sports, and kids programming, because the picture is bright enough.